we kind of figured after talking that with the consolidation and changes in the corporation, we would probably be a good corporation that they might want to audit, so we decided we're just gonna make the presentation the way we would as if DUAB was coming in, and so you have this information in front of you. So I'm gonna start off with that. It's kind of a combination of a school improvement plan. My intent is to give you an update on where we are with all the transitions, give you some high points. In the next 3 meetings, you're gonna be having your meetings in each of our buildings. They will do a deeper dive into specifics in their buildings, so I'm gonna try to give you a big overview without a lot of specific building detail. There are some things I'm gonna highlight, but obviously they'll go deeper. What I'd like from the board is if there are specific items that you see covered either in the PowerPoint that you have a copy of, or the corporation profile and improvement plan that you want more information on, you do have nice little Lakeland sticky pads on there if you would like to jot those notes down, so I can either pass it on to building leadership or I can get you more information as we move.
Before we move on, I'm not in the way, am I?
No,
Sure.
you're
The
absolutely
thing I
fine.
was is,
You only wish, David.
maybe I thought I was in the way.
Looking over right from the beginning. So updates on education and operations, state of Lakeland School Corporation. So obviously we're all here because that is our mission, and we are here to educate and prepare all of our students for career and life success. So what you will get is some statistics, as I mentioned before, and the layout is going to talk about academics, behavior, and social emotional, which is our the path we're taking when we look at all data with students with our MTSS pilot that I'll talk about a little bit more. So, as if you didn't know, that's the outline of our school corporation. We are 148.82 square miles. And I'm including how many mailing addresses because we've talked about doing a mailing here in the near future. So that's how many homes, businesses, or PO boxes will be receiving information from us. You've seen this before. These are our top 10 taxpayers. We're waiting on updated information. I don't imagine those are going to change much. Just over $45 million assessed value just from those top 10 taxpayers, but they help support our school corporation and help feed into what Kirby was presenting to you about. Little information on where we were with our certified staff. The number of 126 certified staff, when I did the calculations, this includes any staff member, teachers, and any other person holding a teacher's degree in the corporation, so the numbers might be a little different from what Jenny gave you as far as total teaching staff. So I just wanted to clarify that. Same number last year was 141. Staff degrees, nothing too different than what you see in other school corporations. We have a couple of doctoral degrees. Bachelors are the majority, and masters. We have a number of teachers with masters. Years of experience, the 0 to 5, little higher uptick than we've had. We have a lot of new teachers, which isn't a bad thing, but a good distribution of how many teachers we have in each of the areas. If you'd like a historical perspective, I have a few years back on that if you wanted to compare, but not too many changes from year to year. Continuing with certified staff, looking at our ethnicity, we are overwhelmingly white, looking to continue to expand our diversity in teaching staff. Along with gender, we are overwhelmingly female. And one thing we know from research is students work well when they have role models, whether it's a gender role model or whether it's an ethnicity role model. So we would like to have that look more like our student population that you'll see eventually. So obviously as we recruit, we want to include a little bit more diversity in our staff. Looking at our classified staff, 130 classified staff. Last year we were at 151.5. Again, overwhelmingly white, but we do have a little bit more diversity with our classified staff, even more so overwhelmingly female in our classified staff. So interesting stats to look at. Moving on to our students. Anything I present on students, I'm pulling from IDOE's Compass, because I always, especially in a public presentation, I want people to be able to go back and find the same information in one place or the other. So there are a few that need to be updated, and I'll talk about those in a second. They list our enrollment for this year at 100. Let's hope not. 1,705. That includes the 40 preschool students that we have. So they count students in our total enrollment. They don't give us any money for those preschool students, but they count them as part of that. As you'll see, we're getting more and more diverse. Our fastest growing demographic is our Hispanic population, just over 20% at this point in time. So we are getting more diverse, and that is a lovely thing. Free and reduced and paid meals. A little historical perspective there for you. Back in 05, 06, we were at almost 64% paid. That dropped to a low of just under 40%. In 2009-10, it's been increasing. We've been pretty steady at around 50% paid, and then non-paid. There has been an uptick, almost a percentage point from last year to this year on free meals. So we're seeing at least families taking advantage of that when they need to, and that is a good thing as well. We do not have updates on special education and English language learners just yet from the state, so I still have 18-19 numbers on there. Do picture special education moving from what was 18% or so last year, maybe an uptick higher. Same thing from English language learners, that has been creeping up slowly. We were at about 9, I don't have the actual number, 9.9 or something like that last year, looking at potentially to increase just a little bit. So as soon as we get the official numbers, we will get those to you. Some stats from the different departments, and David was talking about this a little bit before the meeting started. We have 38 yellow buses. We had 39 last year. 5 activity buses stayed pretty standard. That has not changed. We had 24 bus routes plus moving our early intervention students. Now we have 24 bus routes, early intervention, and some special ed routes that we have taken on, which is also a cost savings for us. If we move our own students, then we're not paying for that to happen through the co-op. Last year we had 26 routes, and EI was included in there last year, early intervention. Right now we're driving 1685 miles per day. That is down from the start of the school year where we were a little over 1800. We are piloting some K-12 routes, so that has cut down on some of that mileage. Again, it's higher because we're bringing everybody from the outer areas into LaGrange, so that's added a few. Last year we had 1557 as our total. On fuel, fuel is on a calendar year, so you got your comparison there for diesel and gasoline, and also comparable numbers for 2018. Food service. Lots of food served. If you look at 18-19 and actually divide that up by days and how many kids, we do serve less than one meal per student. We do have a lot of students who choose to pack their own meals. So if you do that calculation, you'll notice that. 441 of those were alternate meals. Students get alternate meals after, if they have no money in their balance. They are given 2 meals, regular meals, as parents get contacted to remind them about that. And then only after that do they get emergency meals, and that's 2 lunches and 2 breakfasts, if students eat both of those. Current counts gives you a breakdown by breakfast and lunch for each of the schools, along with how many alternate meals so far in 2019 and 20. All those fun facts you have at your disposal now. And then finally, maintenance and custodial footprint. Just giving you the square footage of each of the buildings. Obviously, the square footage hasn't changed at all in the junior senior high and the intermediate school. Those 2 schools share 92 acres between them. Primary has 18 acres, and their entire square footage is there. Obviously, we're not using the entire building at Lima Brighton and Wilkett Mills, and so a decreased calculation compared to last year. Lima Brighton average of about 4 rooms that they use on a regular basis. Wilkett Mills a few more, average of 6, due to EI being in that building as well, so they use some of the space there. So some square footage information for you there. Before I transition to academics, do you have any questions? Lots of information. You probably want to digest that for a while before you come. So you thought you had a lot of financial information. I'm tossing square footage in there as well. So I believe as of today, we're officially held harmless on our school scores. We are actually, we have a reset because we've gone from 5 buildings to 3 buildings. But I did want to share, especially federal accountability, because I think that's the easiest one to understand. Again, you've got all 5 of the old schools there, but there are pieces that are informing our work forward that I thought would be important for you to see. If we look at all the schools next to each other, obviously the does not meets are the ones that we're concerned with. Specifically looking at gaps, and I'll be talking about that here in a second. Anywhere you see an asterisk, that means there's not enough data there to report. The nice thing about federal accountability is it makes us look at our subgroups, and I think that's important because there are some subgroups that obviously stand out more than others, but you need 20 at least to account for that. So lots of positives. I mean, if we look at overall rating, we're either approaching or we're meeting. Again, the world has changed because we've got all our kids mixed together, but things of concern is obviously math and English progress, nothing new. The board has discussed that for a long time, and I'll point out some things that we're working on there. Subgroups like free and reduced or special education, those are areas that we need to watch students' academic challenges and improvement in those areas. So just kind of a snapshot of all 5 buildings, and we'll look forward to what it looks like for next year.
May I ask a question?
Sure, go back.
Somebody approached me last week at the basketball game and said, Sue, what does approaches mean?
There are.
And I said, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be approaches, there are gradations of percentages of different categories, so to keep it simple, I just left it as what you could be approaches, you could be meets and just barely over the line, so there are specific percentages, and I can give you if the board likes, I can give you the specific breakdown. If you look in the packet I gave you, the state report cards in there, the feds have a similar report card, and they give you those percentage breakdowns in
Well,
there.
the question that was asked to me, how do we know if we're this far from meeting, if we're in the approach group, or we're
Right.
this far from
Right,
meeting? And
right.
I
Right, they give that specific breakdown, I just figured that would be
And that's
overwhelming
in
at
here?
this point. No, it looks similar to the state one I have in there, I did not give you each one of those buildings, but I can.
okay.
But yeah, it's one of those where if you're here, it's kinda like pass and pass plus on testing, you could be anywhere in that range, and if you're in it, you're happy, if it's a good, if that makes any sense.
But if you're at way
Right,
down here
right.
versus,
Right, so there are delineations. One of the points there, obviously the gaps, that has been a concern over a number of years, and so last year, we did some piloting with Orton-Gillingham methodology, which is a very prescriptive way to help, students learn, reading and their letters and syllables and all that fun stuff. And so we have some projections, if you notice on the left-hand side, projections based on years of just using our reading, writing workshop model, not seeing a whole lot of progression. And you have a little bit more detail in your packets there. Based on pilot results and the work so far this year, we are looking at the potential for some really great gains. And I know Tracy's gonna be talking about this in her presentation, so I don't wanna steal all her thunder, but we're seeing a lot of positive with adding the Orton-Gillingham methodology, starting at primary and working our way into intermediate to help close those gaps. Because obviously if you look at this here, if we're not getting students meeting achievement goals by the time they get to 3rd grade, it just continues with them, and we've seen that. Really obvious in this graph, looking at intermediate school grade reading levels of this fall, with benchmarking, a lot of kids below, a bunch of kids above, and not too many on, and I think it gives you an idea of how those gaps develop and move through the process. Looking at our primary grading, reading levels, a lot of kids coming in below, some on, a smaller number above. We are seeing students coming in with fewer skills, so this is probably great timing for OG to be used there. Another positive is we've got our preschool children getting a jump start. Obviously, they're learning more than letter recognition. They're doing math, they're doing social skills, they're doing a lot of things, but since I'm focusing on literacy right here, just looking at where our kids on average were, knowing their uppercase letters at the start of the school year and where they are now, kids knowing their lowercase letters and where they are now, they're making some incredible progress. So it's gonna be great to see where our students are, similar data, but a lot of kids coming in with a lot of different skills. You can only imagine a student who's in preschool right now who would be coming into our kindergarten classroom, not only knowing a few letters coming in, there's a lot of catching up to do. So the more we can support our kids, the better off we will be. Moving on to the other end, you already know about our graduation rate. We did take a hit this year, actually last year, 2019. Previous year was 92.8%, 83.6, in 2019. Again, I'm not gonna steal Mr. Albaugh's thunder for when he gives the presentation for junior, senior high. The positive is that the majority of that cohort that did not complete on time have returned to try to complete in year 5, and we've already had some successes of students completing. So we do get credit for 5-year completion as well, not as great as 4-year, but at least students are coming back and completing. And sometimes when kids start off behind and they get all the way to 12th grade still behind, sometimes it's a struggle to get through and finish, but we're gonna keep working with them. A number of years ago, you had National Clearinghouse data presented to you on how our students persist. So some updated information from National Clearinghouse. Trend hasn't changed too much. Students enrolled in their first year, either working on an associate or their 4-year degree, returning to their second year is a 79% average. So some students don't persist. Students completing a degree within 6 years, 25% average, which is pretty similar to what we see across the state and across the nation. So getting our kids to finish once they're in is also difficult once they leave us. One thing we have seen over the years is that if they go to smaller independent schools, they tend to persist longer, that smaller supportive environment. And so continually looking at how we can help kids get better in academics. Moving on from academics, moving on to behavior. So we were part of a group that was looking at positive behavior support last year, which has gotten us better at looking at infractions. The huge positive is this year at this point, and even last year, the majority of our kids don't get in trouble. Not a lot of infractions, not a lot of referrals, and usually those kids that have 0 or 1 to 2, it's related to tardies or something that isn't that bad. So good stats, and we're following those closely. We do exclude attendance when we look at top 5 behavior problems. We do this is corporation level data. Each building is diving into their own particular data, but those are our top 5: insubordination, disruption, injury to others, disrespect, profanity, and obscenity. And junior, senior high issue really is the attendance. That is the top one. So tardies and skipping are there, but look at corporation overall, those are the ones that we are looking at. Yes.
The insubordination that seems very high there is also classified if they missed detention. I've seen a rise in our numbers since August as we started classifying. If you miss detention, it goes into insubordination, and then it turns into like a Saturday school. So that's where you see a rise in those numbers. Just want to kind of point that out, because it looks like our kids are being jerks. In reality, they just don't come on Wednesday to get attention.
Or it may be something like you've been asked to do something and you
Correct. It
refuse,
could also
and,
be.
you know,
It
so
could
it's
also
not
be, but
it's not like, you know.
If you look at our
necessarily
numbers from August to December, it looks like there's a sharp rise in attitude, but it really has to do with changes in tardy policy and stuff like that.
And you guys will talk about that more when you go
Yep,
your
sorry.
building presentation. So I was trying not to I was
I'm
going to give
sorry.
descriptions in there, and I thought, no, we'll wait.
I apologize.
We are looking at our subgroups. So if you're a male at Lakeland School Corporation, you're not doing so well. Again, going back to role models. So is that or increasing more male role models in the corporation? Would that be a good thing for our males? But they make up 50% of our population, but they also make up 75% of all of the infractions. So this is last year, since we have a whole year's worth of data. Looking at our IEP students, they make up last year made up 18% of the population, but 25% of our infractions. Multiracial, it seems like no big deal, is 4 and 5, but with such a small group, if we're looking at 4% of our students being multiracial, but making up 5% of the infractions, these are the types of things that we're like, let's look at this a little bit more closely and see if there's some kind of disparity. And then similar to our ENL population, make up 10% of our population, but 19% of the infractions. So these are the kinds of things that at building level, everyone's diving into a little bit more closely to look at what the issues are and how can we really attack the issues and help improve behavior. Social and emotional learning is kind of a new area of how to track information. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But basically, we're working on building student and staff skills in self-regulation, whole person health, and providing support systems. You'll notice my Friday messages usually relate to something about self-care or working with other people. Things we do have in place are SAP, Student Assistance Program, and Employee Assistance Program contracts with both Bowen Center and Northeastern Center. adding Northeastern Center as of December. Exposing staff to QPR training. We have our own in-house trainers that train the entire staff at the beginning of the year again. De-escalation to teen brain. We're exposing students through community time in the elementary level, sources of strength, Navion, Strengths Finder. Those are all pieces that feed into this. We will be getting baseline data. I will be coming to you soon once the state releases our use of Panorama to do a survey to get a baseline of social emotional learning from our students, and that's part of our pilot. We'll be working on some workshops for regulation strategies on our March Flex Day, looking to bring in Dr. Brandy Oliver to do that for us, and looking to track statistics like this. This was a positive a goal of the athletic department. Roman had a goal of setting high expectations for coaches and athletes. His goal was that the athletic department GPA would be at 3.0 or higher each season, and this fall that target was hit. The cumulative student athlete GPA was 3.06. So that would be a social and emotional learning support, because we've got coaches working with athletes, everyone supporting them. That kind of extends just looking at a GPA, but also the work that goes behind it to get that up. So we'll be doing more of that tracking. Just to give you a little bit, I think I've shown you guys this diamond before. RTI, which is response to intervention, has been very embedded in our elementary levels, where we focus on the kids who need help. Multi-tiered systems of support is kind of a kick up to that, because we're looking at all students, just like our mission tells us to. So not only are you looking at the students who need interventions because they have deficits, we're also looking at the students on the other extreme of, are they getting their needs met if they are at the higher level. And so that's the beauty of multi-tiered systems of support, because it helps everyone. And so we were chosen by the state to be part of a pilot, which means we're going to be tracking things like academics, NWEA, iLearn, and internal grades, behavior, those infraction subgroups as I showed you. We are tracking attendance of both staff and students, so I'll be reporting that to you once we get some more data as the year goes on. And obviously we'll be working on a baseline for social and emotional information. And then finally, last year we had some strategic goals. You actually have those in your packet. But then we had an engagement review. Advanced Ed came in with a team and they said, hey, these are the things that you really should be working on to get yourself to the next level. So I'm gonna list all 4 of those and kind of give you some sub-points as to what we've been working on to meet that. Number 1 was to continue to enhance social and emotional supports to help students overcome challenges and find success. Obviously, they noted, as we do, we have students who do have needs, social emotional needs. So the MTSS pilot works nicely with that. We've continued outreach to local agencies like Bowen and Northeastern Center, and actually Northeastern Center is getting ready to start a pilot in our behavior intervention classroom that feeds all of our schools in the county for in-school suspension. They are actually going to be giving skills coaching to those students who have gotten themselves suspended, and with parent permission, they will get some coaching through Northeastern Center. So they are working on bringing that in, so I think a great support from them. Number 2 was to implement a formal documented process to review curriculum to ensure alignment to standards. We have now published finally curriculum maps. That's a work in progress. Career pathways are already in our curriculum online in the curriculum tab on our website. There is a systematic overview of high ability that's posted and in progress. We'll be adding MTSS to that, and also adding information on iLearn supports for teachers to tap into as well. We've developed, thanks to Mel, a technology advisory committee, and not a community, but I guess we could be a community, typo there on my part. We're reviewing all our learning management systems and all of our digital curricular support, so there's a group looking at that. And we have groups reviewing math, language, arts, and science curricula, and we are looking to focus on adoption from that work. Number 3 was to implement a formal documented process to monitor instruction and provide feedback to teachers tied to a culture of achievement. Our building administrators are working with educator aid consultant Justine Gonzalez on culture, classroom observation, and feedback, and she's been awesome, and they've really enjoyed the time they've worked with her. And she's also working with us, as the board knows, but for the public, we're revisiting culture of Lakeland School Corporation and having discussions related to that. And I think she wants to come in and meet with you guys in February, so we'll talk about a time to do that. And then last but not least, develop and implement a mentoring program to support teachers new to the system and to help recruit new staff. We have teacher mentors receiving either a $500 stipend out of our Title II funds, or 90 PGP, professional growth points for mentoring new teachers utilizing personalized plans. And right now, 16 teachers, and adding a 17th one that just got approved today, to that are being mentored, and we'll be monitoring that whole process as the year goes on and getting their feedback. So more to come, deeper dives at building level. I know that was a lot of information, hopefully useful, and you might want to dive deeper into some of that, but we'll save that for upcoming board meetings. Reminder, that is our focus, our mission, and with that, I will turn it over to
I have another
Kirby,
question.
unless you have a question.
Imagine that,
That's okay.
a teacher has an opportunity to be mentored for 2 years.
Well, so, that kind of came about from teacher, recommendations. So we started the program, and then a couple teachers said, you know what, I was new last year, is it okay? And it was like, sure, why not? So,
Okay.
if there
So the
wasn't-
opportunity is
the
there.
opportunity is there. So
Okay.
if someone wants to continue, so we're kind of piloting all of this, and really trying to make it teacher specific instead of a cookie cutter, everybody gets the same thing. So teachers gave us feedback on what their needs are, how often they wanna meet. Teachers volunteered to be paired with them, and they're kind of working together through their process. Anything else before Kirby gets to go into a lot more detail about finances?
So you said the athletics, if you were an athletic student, they got 3.06. What's the average? Do we know
Oh, across the corporation?
yeah,
I can buy that.
Non-athletes.
or, I mean, then we could do, yeah,
Sure.
but I just wanted to kinda average
Awesome.
what we are anyways.
I will jot that down and get that information to you.
Roman, do you know what it was when you began as AD?
I'd have to look specifically, but for some reason I wanna say that I can reflect back and it was like a 283. That's like was stuck in my head, but I can pull that and look.
That's close
I
enough.
wanna say that it was in the 2.8s when I first got here, for the fall, just
Yeah,
the fall.
Yeah, well, congratulations, that's a
Yeah,
good deal.
and that was originally like a an extended
It was a
goal.
5-year, it
Yeah.
was a 5-year goal.
Yeah, and so that the goal early, so.
Mhm.
I'm
Not
very,
3.5.
so, okay, Kirby, all yours.
Let's go backwards.
Do you have a to go along with also?
Yes, it's the fiscal indicators
Yep.
one.
We already delved deeper into this. We probably want more colors in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw this one. Alright.
It doesn't really stand out, does it?
Our numbers not so far, not very, artsy. So, as I said, our current enrollment is 1687. We are dropping about 49 students per year. And there's quite a few factors that I think that go into this, so you can take it as, you think. Our current kindergarten classes are coming in smaller than our graduating seniors. So those account for, I think, most of that, the 49 student drop. There are students that are leaving our corporation for numerous reasons that we are tracking, school level. And I guess I will stop every slide and ask if we have any questions. So any questions about ADM? Okay, fund balance. So, our current cash balance is $3.4 million, which is made up of our, used to be general fund, which is now our education fund and ops fund. So, this is up from previous years, as you guys probably know, and this is showing that the consolidation is helping us grow our cash balance, and our money saving measures are great. Do you have any questions with this?
So in 15 is 3.9, and 16 is 3.9, 17 is 3.6, 18 is 2.9, is that what that means?
Yes. And I don't know exactly how these are indicated on here, because they can throw in a lot of different funds, but our previous cash balance was always at the end of the year around $2.2 million. So we are up substantially.
Now explain to me exactly what those top numbers are.
So these top numbers are based on the general fund and operations and rainy day. That's what those top numbers indicate.
So it's,
But in those on the DUAB site, there's more than what we consider our, general fund and expenditure.
well, what I'm saying is if you look at the total value of those funds is much higher than the numbers that you're listing at the top.
Yes.
So where do those numbers come from?
These are all printed off of, this is a screen capture of the DUAB site. And then those, in the DUAB site, you can
So
click.
those aren't actually cash balances at the top.
Those would be what these graphs represent, the totals.
You're not certain when those fund balances were
Calculated. Yes.
calculated or were captured?
Yes.
Okay.
Were they all captured at the same time though?
So
Years?
that's where I don't know in previous years, looking back in history, when those are calculated.
When did
Where,
you- when
like in
did you-
2012, when the 4.3 would be calculated.
One of the major things that we're seeing with the actual cash flows that we're doing with our budgets is you can see a decline from, you know, from the back of the data from 2012. You see a steady line down, and in 17, 18, there's a significant drop.
Yes, that's true. And that's the great thing about, the site, is it goes in, if you want to know general fund, it goes and looks at general fund and breaks down every, like, topic of expenditure that we had for, say, 2018, blue graph, general fund, click on it, and it'll show you everything.
So your table on the right,
Yes. That is where we are currently sitting.
so currently our education fund has 1.8, a little over 1.8,
Yes.
but it's only paid 14% of its expected for
So
expenditures, or?
our expenditures. So our expenditures, which I'll
Oh,
say
that's,
later.
you're saying that number, the 1.8 is 14%?
Percent of our expenditures.
Understand, okay.
That's part of the, report, I have to give that number. Anything else?
I think these numbers will make sense when we get the cost per kid and the income per kid again, and show what kind of funding we're seeing.
Yeah.
So again, this breaks down, our fund balance as percent of expenditures, so that 14%, stays pretty consistent, throughout the years. And again, these are all in general fund, which is now education fund, and some people are paid out of other, funds now. Any questions with this one? Same thing with operations, stays pretty consistent with the, actually not, we are down, I think, significantly with the operations.
It's very hard to do this year because you're getting a 2-fund system into what, a
Yeah.
7-fund system?
Yes.
So last year we were at a 7-fund different system into a 2-fund system and trying to make comparisons from, 7 new
Yeah.
data, so.
So that's, and operations did take that into account, but it's still not everything that was in those 7 funds is included in this graph. So our annual deficit and surplus. So as you can see, and all these are without transfers, because we make transfers every month, from ed to ops and ops to eds. So as you can see, blue represents the expenditures. So we have, since 2015, other than 18, we have been in deficit spending. Other than that, we are pretty close with our revenue and our expenditures. And the 4.9, or 494,000 is, pretty standard, which I'll show you on the next slide.
I need to get with Mr. Shakow. I'm gonna need you to hook me up with a math class. Because I'm really, yeah, Bob, can you do that for me, buddy?
I got you, bro. I got
I'm
you.
really, I look at this graph, and this is where the confusion comes in. We're showing deficit spending
That's 3
for
out of
what,
4.
7 out of 8 years? And yet we're still showing,
No.
The last 3 out of 4 years.
Last 3 out of
right, 3 out of 4. Well, no, the purple's spending, right?
13-year-old.
Deficit spending, we're 3 out of 4, yeah.
Yet we're still showing our highest cash balance in years? I don't understand how that can be.
So with that, I believe we did a lot of cost savings last year, knowing that we were gonna do the consolidation. Alone, transportation has saved us loads of money because of not buying buses, cutting down on our co-op costs, because we're now transporting our own students. And those are just in transportation alone. I do think we are saving money on utilities in those outlying buildings because we are only using those few classrooms. And I know towards the end of the years, there was sometimes okay, we're looking here, our cash balance is here, we can get the nice to haves now. Where this year, not knowing where we would be, I said the nice to haves, we're not doing those. So the nice to have that normally could be spent, we're absolutely.
So you're basically saying the cash balance that we have right now is being generated by the consolidation and then cost savings that we've done both before and after the consolidation?
Yes.
And that's all?
I
That's
believe
where it
so.
came from?
And our revenue came in higher than what we anticipated.
We also have how many less employees?
Yep.
I mean, payroll's a
Yeah.
giant
Huge percentage.
piece of
Correct.
that puzzle.
We
and
had targets, but if we did not, I mean, with decreasing enrollment,
Right.
there were positions that weren't filled because we didn't need to fill them.
Right.
And we're still waiting on our February count, so we're being ultra
Which will
conservative.
also make another impact on our revenue moving forward.
Right.
So this right here shows our surplus or deficit, which you can see that 400,000 is pretty standard. Our lowest is 148,000, our highest is 844,000. And these are the charts that I was talking about. When you click on the graphs, it breaks it up into these. And as you can tell in the top left, I broke it down into just the general and operations and rainy day. But rainy day currently we do not have. Any questions on this?
Well, you should probably have a negative or a positive to make it easier to read on that deficit spending, because right now it looks like everything's above board, but right now deficit means a negative number,
Yes.
so
So
it's
all
kinda
of,
hard to read the graph.
all of this chart up here is what they print out. I have no,
So this is one of their charts?
yeah, this is one of their charts. And again, if you click on it, you can see what fund was overexpended or in deficit spending.
And I'm sure had it done the slides in color, deficit would be red, so.
I agree.
A couple negative years.
So the bus replacement fund is in negative in 18.
Is a definite surplus.
We didn't do the saving until 19, so.
Previous chart right here, this chart is surplus. It's not easy to use. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to understand these on the site was especially because they're in the old format. Any other questions? So tuition support. So I broke it down to what our ADM gives us. So we're getting, like I said, $6,893.24 per student. And I took the,
1687.
yep. So I took our ADM divided by basic grant, come up with that number. For our instructional expenditures, and this is all off of a state printed form that they give us. I add up the instructional, and it comes to $7,023. So just in instructional, we're losing money. And then you add operational expenditures, and everything's coming up to, as you can see, we're about $3,000 short per student running the corporation.
Welcome to Indiana State funding.
I think this clears up a lot of the,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of those charts that are difficult to read. Which is about 45%, you know,
All of them.
deficit for me.
Yep.
This is why so many schools in Indiana, you know, especially the two county schools, you know, this is one of the reasons, you know, of a referendum that Indiana's doing, quite often now. So,
We're sitting here pinching every penny we can, and then, and this is the reason why.
Be nice to get some of that voucher money back.
Yeah.
A political statement for you.
Any more questions? So our revenue types and how much they are currently bringing in. And I just hit the major ones. There are some with a few that have a couple hundred or $1,000 in it that I didn't want to bog down with just information. These are our big revenue streams per fund.
How did these numbers compare to last year? Did you guys look at them?
I did not.
Okay.
I can put that in an Excel spreadsheet and send it to you.
Well, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a little help with a little bit of a spike of cash as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was assuming that.
Could you send this, could you send that?
Yeah,
Look
I'll get
into
that.
please?
Any question on revenue types?
just a question I should probably know, what percent of the AV value, the top 10, they make 45 million up, do they pay, of our budget?
I want it's of that 45%. I think our value was
Not 45, but 45 million
45 million.
of assessed value of
Yeah.
the top 10 payers, what percent of the budget is?
They just gave us like 86
Yeah.
million was the total.
yeah
so-
86 million, so pretty close to half.
So, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, not too much else in our part of the county, you know?
Yeah.
Great parks, but they're not generating any
Yeah.
taxes for us.
Any questions on revenue? So salaries and benefits as percents of expenditures. So for the education fund, and you can see what is listed down below, we're spending 77% on salaries and benefits.
Is this certified and non-certified, or is this just certified and
So-
administrative?
This goes to like your building principals,
So
your
administrative
teachers,
and certified?
yes, and not support staff like your parapros and custodials and stuff like that.
Paras come out of this one, custodians do not, but paras come out of this one. Teachers, paras,
Bus drivers.
admins, bus drivers do not, your tech staff
Anyone
does.
directly affecting students
Yes.
on a daily basis as far as their
It's a large
education
number
goes.
of people, but small category.
It just skews the data when you say 77% of the education fund, but it's more referred to, when we look at the entire budget, what percent of the employees take up the budget?
Yeah.
You know, that.
I do not know that.
It was closer to 88%, I think, before. Just to give a comparison of
Mhm.
discounts here.
Any questions? So operations is at 43%, and like you said, that's bus drivers, your secretaries and support staff, custodials.
Central office administration.
And that is all I have for you. Any other questions?
I just wanna thank you guys for, doing that presentation and preparing for potential future audit, or if not, that was great information to share to the public. And thank you for recording it now.
And be prepared for more questions once we have time to digest this
Yes.
a little bit and
Please
beat up
send
the
me-
numbers a little.
Send me questions, I'll find you answers.
And I'm very excited to hear the larger breakdowns when we get out to the buildings and start looking at some of that. I'm very excited to see that, so.
We'll plan to make this an annual, obviously with updates, but since you have the finance update, it's nice to compare
Yeah.
what the previous year looked like and additional updates.
And hopefully moving forward, yours will be a little easier to understand because now we'll have at least a year
Yes, to
with the
compare it
proper
to.
format that we can actually look at it. Cause to me, that's terrible comparison when, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely apples to oranges.
I had the same problem with diving into this.
Well, and unfortunately, that's the only numbers we've got to go by, so, but it makes it
I think
difficult.
UAB is just as frustrated, which is probably why they're going out and doing school audits, just to do some cross.
Which I think is a great idea. They should be doing that.
Thanks, Kirby.
Thank you, Kirby. So moving on to item 7,